what I do. And we're recording. Great. Um, and so I'm excited to share that with you, and hopefully you'll learn something. And I would love your feedback so that I can learn something as well. So just a little bit about me. I am the director of internships at Birmingham Southern College. I'm located in the Krulak Institute, which is the home of experiential learning at BSC. And among my many different job responsibilities is coordinating the mentoring program. A little bit about the Panther Partnerships program. So it was actually started before I came to BSC as staff in 2012. Linda Flaherty Goldsmith, who was serving as the BSC Chief of Staff and who later became our president, founded the program. I think she modeled it after one that she had been involved with at the University of Alabama. So took something from a much larger school and brought it to this small school and gave it a more personal touch. In Panther Partnerships, students are paired with a mentor from the community who they meet with for an entire academic year, and they're supposed to have at least monthly meetings. We think that is about the right frequency for them to make progress without it becoming overburdensome on the mentor. The program is open to sophomores and above, and there is an application and interview process. So not just any student can join. We try to screen to make sure that they understand what it means to have a mentor, that they have appropriate goals, and that they have time to commit to the program, because it is a bit of a commitment for students. And so we have about 30 to 50 students each year. We were higher before COVID, and we're building back up. The mentors are professionals from the community. Some are Birmingham Southern alumni, but many are just friends of the college, or even some total strangers that I have found on LinkedIn and reached out to and said, hey, I've got this great student. Would you want to work with them? Sometimes the total strangers have become some of my very best mentors. So I don't rule anyone out. My pool of potential mentors is vast. Importantly, the program is student driven. And so what we mean by this is that the mentor is not going to be reaching out to the student to schedule meetings or to prompt them on things they need to be working on. Students initiate meetings, they prepare agendas for the meetings, they set their goals for the program. So I can give them ideas. Here's some activities you might want to work on with your mentor. Here's some topics you might want to discuss or skills you might want to develop. But ultimately, it's up to them to look at where they are in their education, in their professional journey, and to say, okay, for me right now, here's what I need to work on with the mentor to get where I want to be after college. So it's very individualized and very student driven. And we're really asking a lot of the students. So we're asking them, you have to set these goals, you have to interact professionally, communicate professionally, prepare an agenda, build a relationship with a total stranger. So students really have to step up to be successful in this program. And what I've learned over the years is I need to step up as well in order to give them the tools that they need to be successful. So the big challenge for a program like this, how do we create a program that works for students of different ages, backgrounds, goals, personality, skill levels, majors, career interests, with all the diversity in this program? How do we create something that lets students build deep relationships with their mentors and achieve meaningful goals through the program? That has been the challenge. I think being at a small school, we can't have one of these in each academic department. I've got to be able to serve the whole campus through my program. And how do I do that well? So take a look at this slide. You may even want to screenshot it to refer back to as we go through the rest of the presentation. But these are descriptions of some students who have been in the Panther Partnerships program. And as I'll describe in the next section of the program, I want you to think about these students and make note of ways that the program was set up to help them succeed, or maybe how it failed them. So keeping that in mind, let's just take a second. And feel free to unmute and jump in here with some answers. But what might some of these students need or want from a mentor? And how do these characteristics I've listed, how does that affect what they need to be successful in the program or the challenges they might face? And y'all can just unmute and jump in. We're a small group, so I think we'll be okay. Okay, or we could just keep it in mind as we go forward. But I think you can see from these characteristics that there's a wide diversity. There's students who grew up going to the office with their parents. They're very comfortable in those environments. There's students who are first generation who don't really have anyone in their family who has modeled, certain types of careers for them. They may not know what they need to do. They may not know how to network. So they might need to have some different kind of scaffolding to help them succeed in the program. There's even different personality characteristics that I think we might want to take into account. If a student is soft-spoken and reserved, they might need a different type of mentor than a student who's very outgoing, always coming up with questions, and very comfortable being a little more gregarious. So keeping that in mind, as I describe the program, as it was when I first started. So the first year that I ran this program, I really didn't want to change anything. Partly make it easy on myself. Partly I wanted to see how it went. How did it work? I wanted to be able to figure out through experience what was working and what wasn't. So this first year, I had students answer these questions on a written application. Didn't have interviews. I just sat in a room by myself and I read the applications and I said, I think you're ready for this program, or I think maybe you want to wait a year and let's talk and let's get you ready for next year. That was the application process. So you can see I pretty much focused exclusively on career goals, professions. What's next for you after college? How can a mentor help you get there? Had a very narrow focus in that application. Every year we hold an event called Meet the Mentors, which is where students and mentors meet for the first time. And so I did this just like it had been done before. We were in kind of a medium-sized room with about 60 people, rows of chairs. I stood up at the front and welcomed people and walked them through a packet and said, students, here's what you need to do. Prepare your agenda, schedule your meetings. Mentors, here's what you need to do. Respond to students' emails. And then I basically turned them loose and I said, all right, be friends, form a relationship, mentor, be mentored. Good luck to you. You can imagine about how well that went. But that's what we did. And then after that event, I had students submit goals to me. I wanted them to submit 3 goals to work on with their mentor over the course of the program. The quality of these goals, highly variable. Some were excellent. You could tell these were students who had kind of a laser focus, maybe had already done some internships, knew what they needed, knew how a mentor could help them. There were other students who put things like maintain a high GPA. And I thought, well, that's not really a goal for your mentor to help with. They're not going to tutor you. That's a different goal for you. Or they would say, I want to witness courtroom proceedings, which is a great thing to do. But why? What is that in service to? That needed to be in service to a bigger goal, not just kind of these one-off activities that you do and you're done, because then you've got the whole rest of the year with your mentor and you're not using that time wisely. And I also, with these goals, just kind of trusted that they would do it. It was a student-driven program. So I wasn't checking in to say, hey, are you making progress? How's it going? I said, you're supposed to meet every month. You're supposed to work on these goals. Student-driven, you need to do that. Okay, so let's go back to those students. As I just described the program, who do you think would be the most successful?
I would probably say the student that that really applied, or the student that probably had more resources.
Mhm.
because for some students who don't have the resources, I could see them, or who's doesn't have an outgoing personality, I could see that student shying away and not being assertive. Like you opened the mic, you said open the mic and ask a question or answer a question, and no one opened the mic. So if that's one of our students, then that student, I can see that student not being successful. But if you have that outgoing personality, then that student could be successful.
Absolutely. So yeah, that second student, outgoing, not afraid to ask questions, they probably jumped right in and started picking their mentor's brain. Some of the shyer students, maybe not so much. The room was loud, it was chaotic. They didn't know this person, I mean, that would be challenging for me, I think. And you mentioned students who have more resources probably being more successful. Sure, a business major whose parents were in business, they're kind of already familiar with that world. They probably grew up talking to adults in these roles. And so that might be a much more comfortable situation for them where they would know more what types of questions to ask. Whereas a first generation student may not have been in that type of environment before, may not even really know where to begin. Um, or even this other business major, he wants to be an entrepreneur, but might not know a lot about entrepreneurship and how does he even know what goals would be appropriate for him. Um, so there were a lot of ways I think that this initial run of the program didn't work for a lot of students. In that application process, I didn't take their personality into account at all. So I might be giving the very shyest student the loudest, most gregarious mentor, who's really going to just make them shrink back. I didn't ask about that. I didn't ask about their preferences for a mentor, what they would like their mentor to be as a person. I just asked about career fit, and that's what I used to do the match. I also didn't really assess whether students would be successful in the program. Would they respond well to feedback? Do they have the time to commit? Are they able to follow through on that regular schedule of meetings? Didn't have a way to assess that. So I probably let some students in that maybe weren't quite ready or didn't have the time or already overcommitted and couldn't really do that. I also didn't have any input from others in the decision-making process. And I'll talk later about why I think that's so very important. Didn't meet the mentors. We didn't have any icebreakers. There was no way for them to really get comfortable, just talking as people before they jumped into that mentor-mentee relationship. The space wasn't even very well designed. I mean, it was rows of chairs. I mean, that's not really good for facilitating one-on-one conversation. And then with the goals, they just didn't know what's an appropriate goal. Many of them weren't familiar with the term goals and objectives. So they didn't have any objectives, or maybe all they had were random objectives and no overarching goal. And the goals also for them were just kind of something they had to turn into me. It was a task for them to check off. It wasn't necessarily something that was meaningful to them or that they put a lot of thought into. It was just something they had to do. So they did it. So those are some ways I can see that program kind of failed. And the feedback that I got, mirrored my line of thinking. That initial meeting, awkward. Lots of ghosting, if you're familiar with that term, where people just disappear on both the student and the mentor side. So I might expect if students don't feel prepared for these conversations, they might just disappear. Was surprised that mentors disappeared. And that made me think maybe I didn't prepare the mentors very well or for what this was, or maybe I had the matches were just not gelling to such a degree that even the mentors were like, I can't do this. This isn't good. We're just kind of mutually disappear on each other. I think the desire for more guidelines, topics, and ideas of what to work on, to me, suggests the goals weren't robust enough. Because if you have really strong goals with objectives and a clear path to achieve those goals, you're going to be busy for 9 months. And so I think we needed to work on the goals. And then I did need to check in more. I think student led doesn't mean staff ignore. right? So I still want students to take the initiative. I still want students to be organized and professional and keep communication open. But I do need to be checking in and saying, how are things going? Are you making progress on your goals? Are you off track? And checking in with mentors. Are you hearing from your students? Do you feel like conversations are productive, or do you think your student needs some more guidance in how to make this work? So overall, that whole first year, I think I was just asking students to do things that I didn't prepare them to do. And maybe some students had a background where they could kind of figure it out and pick it up, but a lot of students didn't. Make an agenda for every meeting. How many students have ever made an agenda? They don't know what that is. I mean, what goes on that? Is there a template to use? Like, they don't know. Build a relationship, but I gave them no tools really to do that. I just kind of told them to. So that was the first year. Needless to say, we made a lot of changes. So now I'm going to walk you through ways that I address some of the shortcomings in that initial round of the program. And what I want to address is that all these changes have taken place over 6 years. So it's very much been an iterative process. It was not, I didn't do it once and then solve all of my problems. And some things like the goals exercises, I'm still tweaking a lot today. And again, as I walk through the changes I've made, keep those students in mind and think about, are these changes meeting their needs? Are there ways that students need to be served that they're still not? Keep that in mind. How are we helping students succeed? So the first thing I did, I realized I needed a better application process. I needed to learn more about these students. First off, to see if they have the time, the commitment, the mindset to be successful in the program. But also, I needed to learn about their personalities so that I could help match them with a mentor that they would get along well with. And so I added an interview, and these were some of the questions, and I had staff, former mentors, so people who mentored the previous year, and students who had been in the program the previous year. They sat in on the interviews with me, and they were really insightful, having been through the program. Students knew what was challenging for them, so they could look at other students and say, no, I think they're ready to take that on. I think they could do that. Or they could say, no, I think they need one more year, and then they'll be ready. So it was really, really helpful to have that extra input. And that one change alone, I thought, made the program 1,000 times better. The evaluations were better at the end of the second year of running the program. But there was one student, and this is what he said: maybe you can reach out to more Black mentors, reach out to athletes, because a lot of them miss out on these opportunities. Also, make sure people who don't have a vehicle know that they can still do this program. It's still a possibility for them. So obviously, I knew that we had a diversity problem with our mentors, mostly white. A lot of that is because people who had been mentoring in their 40s and 50s, maybe alumni from when the college wasn't particularly diverse. So I knew, yeah, we need to diversify. We need to diversify mentors in terms of race, age, career field, all of those things. So I didn't know that. But what I didn't know was that students were specifically wanting Black mentors, or specifically wanting first generation mentors, or specifically wanting a mentor who maybe didn't have the best grades, was maybe a C student, but still ended up in a really great career, or a student who took them 3 tries to get into med school. I didn't know students were really hungering for those connections because I hadn't asked them. This was a huge lesson to me. I was matching based on career field and then career field and personality, which is great, but there is more to learning from someone than just learning about their job. And these students wanted someone they could talk to about their lives. Females wanted female mentors. They wanted to talk about work and family, and I'm in a male dominated field. How do I handle that? And so this shouldn't have surprised me, but I just hadn't thought of it yet. I was still in that, just trying to make things work. And so this was really great information for me. And even about cars, the transportation issue, I kind of just assumed if a student wanted to be in the program and they didn't have a car to meet off campus, they'd come talk to me and we'd work it out. hadn't occurred to me that students would automatically rule themselves out from this program because they'd say, oh, I don't have a car. I can't go to meet my mentor. So I guess it's not for me. I cannot thank the student enough for giving me this insight, because what it helped me see was that I was building a program that was functional, that was working increasingly better for students who were already in it. But it wasn't working for all the students who didn't get in it in the first place, because I wasn't making it inclusive. I had a functional program. I didn't have an inclusive program, didn't have inclusive recruitment. So we had to make some changes. Most important change I made was in the interview process. I started asking, when you imagine your ideal mentor, what are they like? And when students answered that question, they might say, oh, they work in marketing, or they're a family law attorney. But then they would go into, maybe they're from a similar background as me, like we're low income and really had to work a lot in college, and it was harder for them to get to where they are. Again, they want to hear about the struggles. Students wanted people where they felt like, oh, they're like me. They've overcome the same challenges. And so what I did with this information, it was extremely helpful in helping me conceptualize who these mentors might be, what they might be like. Some of the information I could get off LinkedIn, right? They had a windy career path. I could kind of trace that. Other information I had to think about a little bit more. So students want mentors who were not good students, who weren't that A student, that shining star. Well, I can't ask a mentor, hey, do you want to work with a student? And by the way, were your grades like kind of subpar? Like, did you have a hard time getting into law school? Was that, because that's the kind of mentor they want. No, I can't ask them. What I could ask a potential mentor is, this student really wants someone who will be open and honest about challenges they faced. They want a mentor who will be vulnerable with them about what the struggles are and how they can overcome it. Are you comfortable having those conversations? Because if you are, I think you might be a really good fit for this student. So that student's feedback on that evaluation completely helped me change the way that I match students and mentors. Okay, so another big change we made before that Meet the Mentors event, we do a student orientation. And at this orientation, I don't just say, be a good mentee, be sure you communicate professionally. We actually talk about, what does it look like to be a good mentee? What are you doing? What are you saying? What are you writing? A professional email, what are the parts of that? You can have a checklist and say, did I cover these things? All right, you did a good job. We talked about, we want students who can respond to feedback, who can accept criticism. Well, what does that look like? What does it mean to respond well or to respond badly? And so we actually did a lot of role playing it was fun for students. They came up with their own little skits. But it really helped them to kind of internalize, okay, I need to be acting in these ways, responding in these ways, communicating in these ways. And I think a lot of the ghosting before was maybe just students who were nervous about reaching out because they were intimidated, because here's this professional person in this great job and they're so successful, and I'm a sophomore and I can't write a good email. I'm just nervous. I'm nervous to talk to them, so I'm not going to reach out. So we want students to feel empowered, like they go in and they know, this is what I need to do to be successful within this mentorship. So we did that at our orientation. We also worked on goal setting a little more specifically. So instead of saying, okay, give me 3 goals, I tried to have students think backwards. So think about at the end of the mentorship, how do they want to be different? What do they want to know? Who do they want to know? What do they want to have learned about themselves or about careers or graduate schools? What skills do they want to have developed? How do they want to be different at the end? And then from thinking about those answers, they can see their goals start to emerge. Some students like to go about it, I guess, from a little bit of a negative spin. So what challenges do I think I'm going to face? Like, let me be proactive. I know I'm going to struggle. What are those struggles going to be? And then they would create their goals around, okay, here's things I need to learn or ways I need to grow so I can meet those challenges, overcome those struggles. And then have them fill out this little chart. So they write their goal in there. But that middle column is really important. That's the why. That's where students articulate how this goal fits into their overall education and professional development. And that's where students really show that they're bought into this goal. It's not a goal that they're doing because they think they should, or because I said they had to, or because it's their friends doing it, but they can really say, here's why this is important to me. That can also help them prioritize. Maybe they have a bunch of goals and they need to see, okay, here's what's most important for me to accomplish with my mentor. And then later with their mentors, they fill in the last column. So their mentor looks at these goals, they talk about the motivation behind them. The mentor says, okay, realistically, in 9 months, here's what I think we can do together. Here's the steps we can take. Let's put this on a timeline so we know if we're making progress and we can check off each step as we go forward. So now they've got more of a roadmap to guide those conversations each month throughout the year. And then I check in a lot more. So I would sit down with students and say, tell me, give me an update on those goals. How's that going? Have any of them changed as you learned more about different careers? We can kind of troubleshoot along the way if they're not making progress or if they need to switch their goals. To help them build that relationship prior to Meet the Mentors, students fill out student and mentor information sheets. Firstly, this has all the communication preferences that they need to adhere to. So mentors can say, yes, you may text me. Please don't call me during work hours. Always email my assistant to schedule your meeting. And if you contact me, I'll get back to you within 48 hours. Students know what to expect. And the same thing for students. But I think most importantly to building that rapport, I ask them just kind of some easy questions, low stakes. And I ask them both the same questions, and then they get those sheets, they swap sheets prior to that first meeting. And so what this ensures is they know a little bit of just kind of fun facts about each other, but also gives them something. Let's say that they're sitting there before the program actually starts, and they're kind of trying to make small talk, and it's a little bit awkward. You can always say, hey, I saw you wanted to be a paleontologist when you were little. Tell me about that. That's really cool. I like dinosaurs too. So much easier to start a conversation with that than with something like, oh yeah, I Googled your company and you did this big merger. I think I'm supposed to talk to you about business things. Tell me about the merger, right? It's a much more natural way to start that conversation. Then once Meet the Mentors actually starts, we do icebreakers. We do some that are purely silly. I just want to get people laughing because I think when you can laugh with someone, you're starting to become more comfortable with them. So we'll do like an either or. Oh, you like beach or mountains, cats or dogs? Sometimes we'll ask just really silly would you rather questions that also can kind of reveal things about people's personalities. And they love two truths and a lie. Every year, I think that's their favorite icebreaker. So just kind of fun. You're just learning fun facts, personality quirks, low stakes, no pressure. Students don't have to impress the mentors at this point. They're just having fun. Then we move into an icebreaker that's a little bit deeper. And so I have them actually interview each other using some of these questions. So now they're starting to think, who have I learned from in the past and why were they important to me? And what did I like about the way that we interacted? And maybe I want to interact with my mentor in that same way. They start thinking about how have I learned in the past? How have I learned unexpected lessons? And why did that stick with me? Why was that memorable? Maybe I want to bring some of that learning quality to the mentorship. So they talk about that, and that's kind of easing us in to a little bit more of the, I guess, meaningful work at the Meet the Mentors event. So next, I have them talk about their expectations and visions for working together. So I give them these questions to talk through. And this takes the place of the old agreement form I used to have. So I used to have a form they signed where students said, yes, I'll submit my goals. Yes, I'll contact my mentor and schedule a meeting every month. Yes, I'll make an agenda. Then the mentor said, yes, I'll respond to their emails. And it was really just a checklist of tasks for them to do, and it wasn't meaningful, and it really didn't guide their experience of working together in any way. And so what I wanted to do here was help each student and mentor pair figure out what works for them and establish a shared vision and some norms for working together. Because I can tell them you have to do these tasks, but that's not nearly as important as how are we going to communicate? If we get off track, how are we going to get back on track? Do we even have the same concept of mentoring? Maybe the student thinks it's one thing and the mentor thinks it's something else. It's really important to get on the same page about what mentoring is going to be for them over the course of the year. So I have them walk through this, and I think this has been really meaningful from the beginning of helping set expectations for here's how we're going to behave, here's what this is going to look like. And that's so much more meaningful than just a checklist of tasks they have to do every month. Okay, so those are the big changes that we've made to shape how students are selected for the program, how mentors are selected, and then to help students set goals and to help build that rapport and get that relationship off to a good start. So now we got to check back in and see how we're doing. How are we doing with those students? So demographically, I'm really pleased with some of our outreach efforts. You can see from the last 2 years of the program, our numbers of athletes, of first generation students, and of non-white students mirror the overall student population on campus. So I wish we had a bigger group. I'd love to get over 50 every year in this program. But I am happy with the representation that we have because to me, that says we're reaching students who could really benefit from this program. And I'm making sure that students like athletes know this is available when, without special outreach to them, they might not. So demographically, I think we're on track. This again was the challenge, make the program that works for all students. And so now revisiting these students, tell me, does each student under this new structure, are they getting what they need to be successful, or is something still missing? Are there gaps that we still need to plug? And if y'all would rather write in the chat, you can do that too. You don't have to unmute if you'd rather not.
I think so. I think that it helped for some. I think, and so I think it's important for students, student talked about, those who talked about representation and, maybe wanting more, if it's a Black male, maybe wanting more, someone that felt represented them, their background, understand their life. I think it's important.
Absolutely.
I work in a program that serves students who are first gen and income eligible. I mean, the terminology, the correct terminology is low income, but I don't really like saying low income. So I think that kind of is a deterrent. But having, and one of the requirements is that the director can relate to the students. And so I think that's really important. I think that's key with mentors. So maybe, so I think, yes, I think it probably worked. And I think there's probably if there's a disconnect, that could be why, representation.
Yeah.
And
I think
not
that's
having
so
some.
important. And I do try really hard. If a student says, I need this type of mentor, I spend the whole summer trying to find that. So they interview in the spring, and then we kick off the program in September. And in that meantime, I am pounding the pavement or pounding my keyboard, sending emails to really try and honor those preferences, because I don't think students would mention them if they weren't important. So in addition to just the personality that I observed, I think what students actually say, I need to be, very conscientious about taking that into account. Just like what you said, they need to be able to relate. And I think that's one of the most important things. It's not just a plug and play where I've got this generic pool of mentors and like, oh, you want to be a lawyer, you just get a lawyer from this pool. There's got to be more thought and intention behind making those matches. I will leave you with a few quotes. These are from two different students who have been in the program. And to me, quotes like this help confirm that we're going in the right direction. I'm still tweaking things. I'm still learning from students every year about how I can get better, what more I can improve. But I do think that these quotes show that we're moving in the right direction. We're getting there. And I am happy, my email is on this slide. I am happy to send y'all any information, handouts, anything that I can offer that might help you in your own work. And thank y'all for coming. Don't know, were there any questions? Oh, I see someone would like to connect. I would love that. Let's definitely do that.